Welcome to BizTech Forward, your go-to podcast for cutting-edge insights at the intersection of business and technology. Let's move forward together. Welcome back to BizTech Forward. I'm your host, Ani, and today we're talking about something that affects a lot of us, travel. The way we experience travel is shifting so fast these days. Travelers expect more personalization and convenience, but delivering on those expectations is a whole different story. To discuss all of that, I am joined by Greg Abbott, head of DataArt's travel, transportation, and hospitality practice. Hi, Greg. So happy to have you here.
Good afternoon, Ani. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for taking some time to talk to me today.
Just a couple of words about our guest today. Greg has over 30 years of experience in travel technology, working with companies of all sizes, from startups to large enterprises. Throughout his career, he's been passionate about using technology to actually bring real business results. And for the past 15 years, Greg has been with DataArt, where he founded and now leads the travel, transportation, and hospitality practice. Again, Greg, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Likewise.
I have
30
so
years.
many.
It sounds like an eternity. But they say when you find something that you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I love travel. So yeah.
Oh, wow. You're one of those people who actually have found what they love.
I got hooked on travel many, many years ago. And when I was at university, actually, one of those old travel agencies, they used to have the clocks from all the different time zones on the wall. And I was I got a job working while I was at university in a travel agency, and it thrilled me to no end what travel does, how it impacts people's perspective, the way that when they travel, they see the world differently, they see their own home differently, the exchange of ideas. Really, it's a paradigm shift for many people. And I noticed that at university, when people would go study abroad for a year, they would come back changed. Like their interests were changed, what they wanted to be when they would grow up, all of those things changed. And I love that, how it impacted travel. Of course, the internet was being born at that time. And that changed the way that people interface with how to, shop and book and purchase travel. So yeah, I'm hooked.
Greg, but also, did you start traveling pretty early as well, like back at university? Or
Of course, yeah. So back then they had these things called perks for agents, so you could take a trip for next to nothing. I flew to Tahiti for like $99 a round trip, and so that was, I think, my sophomore year spring break. I went down for like 2 weeks, and so yes, I started traveling as often as I possibly could. Of course, you got work and school, but in between, I got away as quickly as I could.
wow, that was 30 years ago, and you still love travel, and it has changed so much. It's insane, actually.
It has. It really has. And of course, social media and the impact that social media has had on people discovering new places. I mean, it really it gets people excited about the exploration of the world, but also makes the world a lot smaller. And of course, there's some negative impacts with over tourism, I'm sure you've read about the challenges that we have around climate change, sustainability, guarding our heritage and culture, places that are frequently visited, Italy among those, right? That's really struggling with this. But there's some, obviously, like any good thing, it can be spoiled, so it is up to us as conscientious travelers to make sure we take care of all of the things that we touch along the way.
Right. Oh, Greg, you already mentioned so many things that I want to dissect, actually, and I have so many questions for you. But just to start with the big picture, I guess, so many things have happened in travel. Like, don't even get us started on the pandemic. It deserves a whole podcast series, I guess. But I actually did read recently that I think right now the global air traffic is kind of nearly back to pre-pandemic levels. So basically, I'm wondering, I'm interested in your perspective. Like, could you paint a little picture? What is happening in travel tech today?
It's exciting times to be in travel technology, but I will say this. COVID impacted a lot of industries, travel probably the most deeply. But it did cause a bit of a reset and a reboot in a lot of ways. And so while the industry was lacking the funds to really digitalize when everybody else was going through the digital transformation that COVID forced upon all of us. The sort of fact is that travel's a bit of a laggard in terms of digital adoption because of that. So now it's trying to catch up in many ways. And what was originally travel was one of the leading technology forays out there is a bit of a laggard in some ways, but it's still an exciting time to be in travel. I think the age of AI is upon us, and the agentic AI and how it's going to impact the industry. It's hard to say that it's reaching personalization, which we've been talking about in travel for, I don't know, it feels like half of my career. But I feel we're closer than ever to getting to that place where you really will have personalized offers, personalized experiences. And I believe agentic AI is going to help us get there, but it's got some work to do first, right, on the workflow. And how, when I say workflow, I mean really the workforce and how people start to use agentic AI to their advantage. Which will first have sort of productivity gains, but also commercial gains, because most businesses are for profit, and so they're looking to increase their profit margin. But ultimately, it's an exciting time to be in travel because I believe these changes are going to be advantageous to both the people that work in travel, to the businesses that offer travel services, and of course, eventually to the end traveler around some of the things that I'm sure you get excited about when you travel.
Greg, and since you mentioned personalization right away, I wonder, is it really tricky to actually get it right? And if so, can you share like an example of a company maybe that did nail personalization?
Yeah, well, my bar is pretty high on what personalization would mean for me. So I
Tell
don't
us
know if
more.
anybody. Yeah, well, I don't know if anybody's got it right yet because putting all the pieces of a trip together, right? There's this moment of exploration at the beginning of the trip where you have this anticipation of trip planning, right? And there's so many startups and lots of them failed startups and trying to conquer trip planning to get in as early as possible in the cycle around your inspiration. And there's different types of travel, right? Sometimes Annie's traveling for business, and so you have a very different set of needs. And so, which person are you, right? That's one of the age-old questions around personalization. Are you the business Annie? Are you the leisure Annie, right? So, and how are your needs different? And then so there's the whole planning part, and then you can imagine there's the actual trip itself, which is often around some mode of transportation. And while you might have loyalty programs that start to get to know you really well, you can't always go on that carrier or that means of transportation. And so it's really hard to get a personal trip with the transportation if you're changing providers often, right? And so then once you're in the destination, there's experiences, you're in new places at different times. How do those people that are doing the, gondola excursions in Venice or the jet ski in Hawaii, how do they know who you are and how will they know whether you've done this before without you sharing information? So when I think about personalization, for me, the bar is quite high because I think it's connected to something that you might see in the future. And there's lots of talk about basically universal IDs or digital ID, right? Which is this concept where you as a traveler can share your digital ID, which will help companies that plug into your digital ID know what your preferences are, know how you like to pay for things, know who your loyalty is. It's connected to a wallet. EU is, of course, I believe in 2026 they have a mandate out where they're trying to say all citizens of Europe have the right to have a digital wallet if they want to opt into that. So you start to see the pieces coming together to connect those things. But I think we have a long way to go to get to personalization that I'd like to see, which is, again, you can think about connecting to your wallet. You've got different modes of payment in different places. Here in the United States, we have these addicts to the people that are addicted to points that have their credit cards. So they have specific forms of payment to pay for different types of things. You can imagine pulling that all together can be a very complicated picture.
Wow, I bet even hearing about it is a bit overwhelming. Greg, but Is there a limit to how far things can go, or are we heading towards a world where every travel experience is personalized, or is there a limit? I wonder.
It's a good question. I think the limits are there's going to be limits, right? I think it comes around, and it's an interesting question, Anais. I'm kind of pondering it for a minute before I respond, but I think there's two edges that come to mind. There's the sort of limits of the actual like experience itself is limited by spatial limitations, geographic limitations, and these types of things, and then the other limitations is probably around your security and safety, and back to sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those types of things that you can't get, you might take for granted when you live in the Western world, but it's you go to some places and it's certainly not safe. And so I think there are boundaries around this sort of hyper personalized experience, and then you kind of jump off into somewhere like the sort of contrary to that, my statements there might be the metaverse, right? Which could be a very different set of limits in terms of experiential travel. I know there's a lot going on virtual destination tour in terms of development and being able to sit in your chair and go to extraordinary places and have a simulation of an experience that might thrill some people. Personally, I like to put my hands and feet in the water, but who knows? That answers your question, but that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And since we also touched upon AI, how could we not? You know what I wonder, Greg? And I feel a bit silly asking it, to be honest, but I really need to know. AI is everywhere, but is all of it real AI? Like, how do I know what's actually delivering results and what is just marketing buzz? Do you think about stuff like that? Is
Yeah,
it marketing? Is it real hype?
yeah. Well, so I mean, I've shared this in other podcasts, but this sort of Gartner hype cycle of AI, I believe we've kind of there's the peak, right? I think we went off the peak, and now we're somewhere in the trough of disillusionment and kind of coming out of that like curve, and maybe now we're getting to normalization. I used to share a statistic. It was more last year's results, but based on the one of the hyperscalers had shared some data around the number of proof of concepts in AI that actually got to production, and I think last year the number was 4%. So not a lot of it made it to production. This year, one of the hyperscalers shared that it's up to 11%. So I think we're making progress, and I think that a lot of what you're seeing, or maybe you're not seeing yet, has been work that's behind the scenes in democratizing the data required to power the models that are going to perform the activities that companies need to do to serve up offerings and personalize components of your journey. I think the one place that you're probably seeing it, of course, if you follow the dollar, you usually get to the heart as quickly as possible. And I think revenue management and predictive analytics around pricing, which we've done a lot of work in this particular area, I think this is at a place where you may find that you'll go shopping for one thing and you don't decide to buy it, and you come back and the price is different almost like in 3 or 4 minutes later. It's near real time in terms of being able to suck money out of your pocket. Companies are looking to maximize the dollar that they can earn from their people purchasing their goods and services. So I think where it's hitting you is probably AI is, and again, this is machine learning and AI is touching people in sort of revenue management offerings. Obviously, the retailing and what you're seeing in advertising, you're seeing things near real time when you talk about something, and probably even now they're listening to us. And so you go back web search and your results would be travel oriented to some degree. So again, I'm weaving into a number of different areas on that topic, but I think it's it is like it's going to become fabric. So the AI tools are going to be ubiquitous. They're going to touch every aspect of our daily lives, and we as humans are going to be using them to be more and more productive. And it's already taking place, but it's a lot of it is kind of under the surface and not touching the travel experience just yet. But I believe that's why it's an exciting time to be in travel, because once we democratize that data and build modern data platforms, it unlocks all of the advanced AI tools. And you can see how fast things are moving with, OpenAI. At the beginning of the year, they launched their agentic models, and daily you read about somebody new. So one of the new companies offering new use cases for their tools that companies are going to ingest, and now it's more about speed, like who can move faster, adopt the right tools, and sort of overhaul their companies and their organizations to become, so like what do you call it, the AIification of everything. I think that's our next steps in the journey. So
Right. Um, I was just about to ask you about this thing that goes hand in hand with AI, and I feel like it's key, which is data. And so yeah, so my first and biggest question to you, Greg, is data everything in travel as well?
yeah, yeah. I mean, the look, everything's a broad word. Obviously, there's the tangible goods and services that AI cannot do. But I think in terms of facilitating operations and thinking ahead and providing services, and when I say thinking ahead, being able to um, triangulate your guests or your travelers' needs and what their preferences ahead of time. You need the data to be able to make the educated guess or the hypothesis on what you think people are going to need. That's data. And I think our industry has had a lot of walled gardens. And I imagine this is true of every industry. DataArt, we serve multiple verticals. I talk to my colleagues in finance or retail or healthcare. There's always sort of regulatory issues that lock data down, or uh, old silos that have held key data. And of course, that's their business model, and they're not going to give up that data with, around that. They've built a business around that data. And so it's something that they're going to hang on to tightly. So I think we have the same condition in travel. Data will be the key, and unlocking data and then making it meaningful, not just opening it up. It actually has to be connected to meaning. And I think that's where a lot of companies require help in navigating the business outcomes side of things. So, okay, you've unlocked it. Now what? Now, how does it actually become meaningful? And so we have a lot of services that we're offering around, making sure the data has high quality, making sure there's data governance, understanding that, it's so funny. There's this almost idea of legacy. Used to be, something was built 10 years ago, but now it's like, if you haven't built your systems around AI use cases, you built it 3 years ago, it could be obsolete. And so there's some real challenges around the companies are facing around stepping through those complexities to really unlock data in a meaningful way that will drive the business outcomes. And prioritizing those things is really one of the key challenges that we help our current clients navigate.
Correct. So data-wise, there is also still a long way to go, right? Or is the industry as a whole kind of keeping up?
Well, I think our industry's a laggard. So I feel like we're slow, but it will be forced to keep up, right? The consumer, as you started out saying, the consumer is ever more demanding. The consumer will demand that the travel companies keep up. And again, it's one of those places. It's odd that travel is sort of most impacted by people's ability to spend money on travel. So it's just considered as discretionary spend item, or businesses will tighten down their budgets for business travel as one of the first things to be cut. So travel is sort of also impacted by changes in the economy and economics across the globe. But it's still one of those things that people will go back to first. Like it's the first thing that people want to think about is, and after COVID, everybody's like, there was an explosion because everybody's like, I got to get out. I got to travel. So it's one of those innate things that we have in us that we want to explore, we want to adventure, we want to see. And at the same time, it is, we're up against some challenges economically, sort of what's going on with tariffs. These things will impact how companies can forecast and, of course, where they'll invest. And that means the speed at which they'll be able to actually attune to some of these needs will be challenged. And so it's about really having a lot of wisdom and stepping through a challenging time. It's exciting, but it's also super challenging.
Greg, you described so eloquently the innate need of travel that we all have, that I'm listening to you, and in my head, I'm just imagining my next trip, skyscanner.com, so.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Just to reiterate for my own understanding for our listeners, if we had to pick the biggest trends right now in travel, would you say these are AI and data? Or would you also mention cloud or how?
Well, okay. So look, cloud is sort of a baseline these days to unlock, sort of the democratization of your data is enabled by some of the hyperscalers and cloud solutions that are out there. So it's like building blocks, right? You want to have cloud native, you want to be able to unlock the data, and then you want to be able to use the agentic AI tools. And that stack, sort of getting your house in order from a technology, business operations, procedures, security, all those things is sort of, in my eyes, table stakes to be able to unlock the future of what we're going to see in travel.
Greg, and do you think that there always will be an...
Don't miss the security. I said security quickly, but it's one of the key. So if you said that the trends, all with the cloud and agentic AI and data, those are the three sort of coupled together, and right alongside of it, all the way up and down, is security. This is one of the key concerns. It's often not talked about because it's less sexy, but as soon as you have something that goes wrong or a breach or an issue, you know that you've seen what happens. It's really expensive mistake. So that's a big trend. It'll continue to be a trend in most industries.
That's true. Actually, I never really see security in headlines. It's just AI and data.
You throw your credit card out there or your bank account out there to pay for something, and you just hope that it stays secure, and all your personal information and passport number and your all of the things that you need, all your identification, your PII, you hope all of that stays in place.
One of my next questions actually was, is there anything that the industry, should be paying more attention to, or something that is less talked about and deserves more attention? So your answer would be security then, right?
Yeah, well, I think people are talking about that. I think if you asked the CTOs and CIOs and what one of their top concerns, like security is almost in the top 1, 2, or 3 for all of them. So I think it's talked about. It's just not talked about in the trade so much unless there's an incident. So it's one of those things that's like plumbing. Nobody talks about plumbing, but guess what? Try a house without plumbing. It's no fun, right? So I think that's the way I look at security. But ask your question again, and I'll try to take it from a different angle.
Maybe like something that the industry should pay more attention to, something that is not talked about as much as it should be. Maybe from all the conferences that you attend, all the clients you speak to, what are you hearing? Yeah,
this is more personal. I don't know. Like, I think we're like, for me, when I talk about over-tourism and sustainability is connected to this, I think about the impact of all the jets flying around in the stratosphere. I think that it's, there's an edge that wants sustainability to be talked about more in our industry. And it was a hot topic a couple of years ago. But I think, like anything, there's ebbs and flows of, it's really actually a commercial issue. It takes a lot of money to be sustainably responsible. And you think about luxury. Is there a way where luxury can exist? If you've ever been on a cruise, it is a luxurious way to travel, but it is not a very sustainable way to travel, right? And again, I'm not bashing cruises. They do an incredible job of aiming to be as efficient as possible, but it is far from sort of what I think sustainability standards produces. Carbon footprint, it's pretty high on the carbon footprint side of the equation. So I think, look, I wish it would continue to be talked about more, but it's back to sort of the dollars. I know that, even when I buy a ticket, they ask me, do I want to pay $25 extra to offset carbon footprint when I'm buying the ticket? And if I'm on a business ticket, my company's not supporting that as a sort of a reimbursement. So it's got to come out of my personal pocket. And I'm not quick to tell you right now, I want to pay the $25 to do the carbon offset. So there's a financial balance between what we need to do. And again, I talk about our conscientiousness globally, like as a global citizens, right? We have a need to try to take care of that which sustains us. And I wish it was talked about more. And I know people are very passionate about it and want to see technology help. But I can't say even like think about the number of machines required to produce these large language models, and they're all burning electricity and producing heat. And obviously, there's a large carbon footprint around the technology required to give us the efficiencies and to drive the economy. So I think it's one of those things where maybe if I was going to predict that it'll never happen, it probably won't ever happen. But I want us to be conscious of it and to try to continue to be as conscientious of travelers as we can and think about not just climate, but also sustainability as a whole.
Right. I'm so glad you brought this up, sustainability. And it is complicated. There is no, it's not black and white.
Quick fix. Yes.
No quick fix.
Yeah.
Greg, and on the flip side, are you hearing of anything, at the conferences you're attending or clients when you speak to them? So is there something that is like an overhyped idea in travel, something that everybody thinks will change the industry, but it probably won't?
Robert Paul will kill me for saying this, but it's like the idea of that there will be standards in our industry without regulation. So I don't believe that we'll ever have a standard unified way of exchanging data. I wish there were, but I'm a little pessimistic, and there are others that have been advocating for this for years and there are groups that we participate in that are advocating standards, but I see that the standards are produced, but companies have the option to follow them or not. And so often even though the standards are there, they won't follow the standards. And so that makes, it more difficult to create a unified environment of exchanging data. And that it just makes extra work for everybody because there's no agreement on those standards. So I don't believe standards will make it, but I hope to be proven wrong, if that makes sense.
Oh, would you say that this is generally an unpopular opinion? Because my best question that I was about to ask was, hey, Greg, do you have any unpopular opinions on the topic?
Yeah, I think it might be an unpopular opinion, or it might be just a realist's opinion. I don't know, but that's the one thing I think that it has to be a government authority that comes in and regulates and forces businesses to do something. I wish businesses would adopt on their own, but I think it has to be a regulatory thing. And I'm not like saying, hey, we should regulate this industry, but I believe that when I've seen standards at play, it's because companies are forced to do something because of a particular rule or something that an administration comes in and forces upon them. So because travel is unregulated, I think standards will never really persist.
Greg, thank you so much for this conversation. Really, I enjoyed it a lot. You're wonderful to speak to.
it was such a pleasure. Your questions were it's some things that I haven't thought about before. So I appreciate you really kind of challenging me on the conversation today. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it's useful.
Thank you so much. And that is it for today. Thank you to our listeners. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, share. And remember, we always want to hear from you. Where do you think travel is headed? Tell us at biztechforward@dataart.com. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to BizTech Forward. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and share to help us reach more listeners. Thank you for being part of the conversation. See you next time.